Jody. Today we're going to learn how to make predictions when we're reading stories. And I've picked out two stories for us to read today. And the first story is Foggy Figure. And I'm going to read the story and I'm going to make some predictions. And I want you to just listen to the kinds of predictions that I'll be making. And we'll see if it happens at the end of the story if my predictions are true. I do have this prediction log. You have a copy of that as well. So when I write my predictions down while I'm reading the story, you can do that with me. Okay? So the first story is called Foggy Figure. And when I look at Foggy Figure, when you first look at a story, you look at, okay, what is the title? And what do I think that title means? Well, when I look at the title of Foggy Figure, I'm thinking, oh, there's going to be some sort of figure that people will see while they're in the fog. And then when I'm looking at the picture here, I see two people in a boat. Looks like they're out in the early morning, and there's some sort of scary figure, kind of like a ghost-like figure. So my prediction is that there's going to be some people in the story that will go out in a boat. People in the story who will be in a boat, and then they will see something scary, and maybe it's a ghost. You think? I'm thinking that might be it. So I'm going to start to read the story. Justin and Mary woke up early, even though they were vacationing at their uncle's lake house. The night before, Uncle Thomas told them about the foggy figure that haunts the lake. Justin and Mary were determined to see the ghostly creature before their vacation was over. Is it foggy outside? Mary asked as Justin peered out the window. Yup, let's go. Justin let go of the curtain and rushed to the door with Mary on his heels. It was only 5 a.m., so everyone else in the house was still asleep. As they crept through the kitchen to the back door, Mary sniffed the air. It had the faint scent of coffee and something sweet. She shrugged it off and followed Justin out the door, down the back steps, and out onto the boat dock. The fog had settled over the lake, making it impossible to see anything. Okay, now I'm going to make some more, or kind of look at my predictions. I've read part of the story and I'm going to think, wow, what's going to happen next? Well, they're getting up early. I think they're going to go out and see, I still think they're going to go see a ghost out in the fog. So I'm going to continue with my prediction that there is some sort of ghost or foggy figure in the fog. So I'm still thinking that. So now they're looking out over the lake, and Mary asked, do you see anything? Leaning forward for a closer look. Nothing. Do you think Uncle Thomas was just trying to scare us with that story? Uncle Thomas did have a good imagination. He's been telling Justin and Mary stories for years. But this was the first scary story. Mary had a feeling it wasn't made up. Mary shook her head. Remember what Uncle Thomas said? The foggy figure haunts the lake. We're on the dock. Maybe that's why we can't see him. People in the story were in the boats. You want to go out in the water? Justin asked. Mary looked around, trying to find Uncle Thomas' boat, but the fog was too thick. So I'm going to think about this, okay? Still about a scary figure, but I'm realizing when they got up, it was 5 in the morning, they smelled some coffee, and they smelled coffee. So I think somebody else is going to be out on the deck. I think somebody in their house was already up. Someone already up. And they may be on the dock. Okay, so that's my third prediction. And Mom and Dad will really be angry if we go out on the lake alone in this fog, Justin said. Mary shrugged. maybe we don't have to go anywhere. We could just sit in the boat while it's docked. That won't be dangerous. Okay, Justin crept toward the end of the dock. He could barely see the outline of the boat. I'll go first. He carefully lowered himself into the boat and then reached for Mary's hand. Mary climbed into the boat and sat beside him. She was getting nervous now that they were on the water. See anything? They looked around and gradually the fog began to lift. Mary turned around and screamed, "The foggy figure!" It was in the boat with them. Okay, now what do I think is going to happen? I think it might be someone they know, the foggy figure. So Justin and Mary hugged each other in fear, but then they heard a laugh. Justin leaned toward the foggy figure. "Uncle Thomas, I knew that story would get you two out of bed early enough to take a boat ride with me." Mary sighed. There was no foggy figure after all. Justin looked relieved too. Uncle Thomas laughed. "What do you say? I packed a breakfast for us." Mary smiled. She had smelled coffee, and Uncle Thomas had packed pastry for them too. "Let's do it," Mary and Justin said. Well, that wasn't quite what I thought originally. So my first prediction by looking at the picture was that there was actually a ghost on the lake. Was that what really happened?
No.
Yeah, I think
It
what
was the uncle.
the uncle was on the lake, was in the boat. And actually the uncle decided to make up the story, made up story, so that his niece and nephew would get up early enough to go out on the boat with him. It was a pretty good story, it fooled me. And then, but the one thing I did realize that I kind of got the clue about smelling the coffee, so someone else was up, and that was true. So that was another prediction I made, that someone else was up, which was true. I didn't know who it was. I probably should have figured it was the uncle. And that he did have coffee and pastries. And then the other prediction I made was that it would be someone they knew. And actually what happened,
Yep.
it was their uncle. The uncle was the foggy figure. So you see how you can kind of stop through a story and think about what might happen next. So now what I want you to do, Jody, is I want you to look at the story. It's called The Skeleton Key. And I want you, before you even start to read it, look at the picture and make a prediction about what you think the story will be about. What do you think it'll be about?
Maybe it's a key and they don't know what it unlocks.
So it's a key that they don't know what it unlocks. Okay, so write that down. And then in their story, I've marked a couple of stop points that I want you to stop and make predictions about what's going to happen after that. So are you comfortable reading the story out loud?
Sure.
Okay.
Eric rang his grandparents' doorbell and silently wished the next 4 hours would go by quickly. He didn't want to give up his entire Saturday afternoon at his grandparents' house where there were no kids in the neighborhood. "You're right on time, Grandma Bethany said, opening the door. "There's tea and cake in the dining room." "Cake? At least the first 10 minutes will go by quickly." Eric hung his coat on the rack by the door and saw a strange-looking key hanging on a hook. "Grandpa Bill, what's that funny key for?"
And then read the next paragraph.
"Oh, that's a skeleton key. It opens the best room in the house," Grandpa Bill whispered so no one else could hear. "It's the room I go to when your grandmother tries to make me help with the dishes."
Okay, what kind of prediction do you have now about the skeleton key?
It opens the best room in the house. Maybe it's like a patio area or something. Someplace people would like to sit.
So it's like a fun patio area. Okay, write that down then. It might open up a patio area. Best room in the house. Okay, so read, continue to read.
What's so special about the room, Eric asked. It's a game room, Grandpa Bill said. Take the key and see if you can find a room by the time I finish my tea. Eric grabbed the key and stared at it. A skeleton key? It looks old. Eric decided the oldest things in the house were probably upstairs in the walk-up attic. He headed past the dining room and to the stairs. Grandpa Bill sipped his tea and shook his head.
So what was the prediction that you make after he shook his head?
So I'm predicting that it's not the attic, or the skeleton key doesn't open the attic.
Okay.
Eric knew that meant he was going the wrong way. He headed back to the front door where he found the key. Eric thought about the oldest part of the house, the basement. It's the first part that's built. He rushed to the basement door and looked at the lock. It was different from a normal lock. He slid the key inside and turned it. With a click, the door opened.
Okay, now what do you think? Oh, read one more paragraph.
Eric switched on the light and walked down the stairs. The basement was one giant room with a pool table, and in the middle, and a dartboard on the far wall.
So what's your prediction about it?
That the game room is the skeleton key, or
Yeah.
is the room that the skeleton key opens.
And okay, and what do you think's going to happen now that he found the pool table in the middle and a dartboard on the wall? What do you think will happen next?
Maybe they'll play games.
They'll play games. With who? Is Grandpa?
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll play games.
Okay, let's see what happens.
Awesome, Eric said. Ever learn to play pool? Grandpa Bill asked, coming down the stairs. No, Eric said. Well then, grab a cue from the rack and I'll teach you. Eric smiled. The next 4 hours were going to fly by.
Okay, well let's look at your predictions and see what predictions came true. What was the first prediction?
That the skeleton key was a key and they don't know what it unlocks. So, yep.
Yeah, that was true. It was
I
a
guess
key.
the grandpa
Well, the
knew.
grandpa knew, but he was kind of teasing the kid with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he was using it as sort of a mystery.
Mm-hmm. That it might open up a patio area because it's the best room in the house. So a game room was the best.
Yeah. So your opinion is a patio room might be the best, but so it wasn't quite exactly what you're thinking, but you didn't have enough information yet. Okay. What was the next one?
That the key doesn't open the attic because the dad shook his head.
The grandpa shook his
Or the
head.
grandpa.
Yeah. You're right, and that was true, right?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't open the attic, so then the boy figured he should do what?
Didn't he just keep walking around?
And I think he was thinking about what is the oldest
Oh,
part,
the
of
oldest,
oldest
right.
part of the house, because I think that was a clue his grandpa gave him, the oldest part of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So where did he end up going?
The basement because it's the first place built in the house.
And what was your next prediction?
That the grandpa and him are going to play games.
And did that happen?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so thinking about, and then there actually was a picture of the basement too that we could have maybe looked at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's one thing we didn't do, but that might have helped you with knowing it wasn't going to be the patio. You're always looking at the pictures. But did that help you kind of get excited about what was coming next, thinking through what the clues were in the stories?
Mm-hmm.
And did you remember the story pretty well after you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, this is one way that you can, when you're reading stories, you can stop and just kind of imagine what is going to happen next and make predictions, and then look for clues. And this is sort of a mystery or kind of a funny story, like the first one I had, a mystery. Look for the clues and then see if those clues come true. It actually makes reading a little bit more fun and a little bit more interesting and helps us remember it. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Jody.
Thanks.
So did that go okay?